Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Eden Eye Tarot, where we illuminate your stars and your cards. My name is Micah. I will be your tarot reader and astrologer today. This is going to be the tarot weather for November 24th, for the week of November 24th. We will be talking about the tarot and astro weather. So before we get into all of that, go ahead and grab your calendars, coffee, wine, snacks, whatever you need. Some people do like to write down the tarot cards for each day as well as the cards for the week, the general week. But also, while you're doing that, or before you do that, if you wouldn't mind giving me a like, share, and subscribe, it would help the channel grow immensely. And I am very much looking forward to seeing the channel grow even more. We've got a significant amount of growth, I feel like, since I've been making videos a bit more consistently. Speaking of consistency, I do apologize for last week. I just was not feeling myself last week. I had a lot going on, as I'm sure everybody did, with that action packed full moon in Taurus. But we are back and we are going to jump right in with the cards of the week. So I actually have two cards of the week for the week of the 24th of November. This is Thanksgiving week for those of you that are watching from in the States. Um, the cards that we have, I think, are very appropriate for a holiday time. So we have the Two of Swords as well as the Death card. Let's focus on the Two of Swords first. So the Two of Swords is a card that's associated a lot with the Moon in Libra. So we have a bit of a focus on relationships and fairness in a relationship, reciprocity in relationships as well. I think when we look at the Two of Swords, a lot of times what we're looking at is some sort of mental strife or some sort of change that's happening in communication, some sort of back and forth. It can have to do with women in particular because it's a Venus. Moon Libra is like a Venus ruled moon placement, but it can just be a focus on relationships in general. When I think about the moon in Libra as well, is I think about finding boundaries when it comes to your relationships with other people and not letting other people kind of run over your boundaries or run over you. And when you look at that, it can definitely cause, if you have not been doing that up until now, it can cause some stress on your end. Obviously, no one wants to hurt someone by, putting up a boundary and saying, no, you do not have access to this. But sometimes it is necessary, and that can cause its own drama. Libra can be a bit dramatic. It as an energy, it can really stir the pot. And I think, again, like with holiday time coming up, I think that is definitely something that the Two of Swords can be saying, is that there's a lot of back and forth, not only across the holiday dinner table, but also internally. With the boundaries that we have to set and how we're communicating with people, really drawing the lines of what we think is fair, especially with this election that has happened. I can only imagine how the Two of Swords is playing out for a lot of people. People really drawing the lines in their relationship, like we kind of talked about in the last video. With the Two of Swords, also, a lot of it is focused on, I think I've kind of already said this, but just to kind of clarify, the Two of Swords is like almost like a stalemate. And it's really focusing on trying not to make a decision quickly because it doesn't want to cause some sort of emotional upset. Indecision is still a decision, very much so. And you can't, you know, make everybody feel comfy. You can't always make everybody feel good about a situation, and it's not going to help you either to constantly be in that like purgatorial state. When we think about the Two of Swords, I also think about indecision. And so that is the Two of Swords. Excuse me. Moving on to, or not moving on, but adding on to that, we have the Death card. The Death card is a card that's talking about sacrifice or putting something to rest or putting something to death. Some sort of huge change or pivoting point is happening. You got to pay to play. when we're talking about the death card. It's saying that some sort of major change is happening. Maybe you wanted it to happen, maybe you didn't, but there is some sort of sacrifice that takes place to be able to create that kind of change. And that might have to do very much with relationships. When we're looking at kind of like the transition between Libra energy and Scorpio energy, it's this focus on what is a superficial relationship, going into what really makes a marriage, that vulnerability, as well as the defenses that you might create with other people or that they might create against you, that really create that intimacy on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And so I think a lot of relationships will go through some major changes this week, but I think definitely it's definitely speaking to the relationship that we have with ourselves and major changes and decisions, hard decisions that we have to make changes not just within us but in our outside environment and our relationships as well. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how everybody deals with this energy over this next week. Feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get into the astro weather. All right, so we are starting out with Sunday, November 24th. The moon will be in Virgo. When we have the moon in Virgo, we're looking at themes such as being of service, scheduling, organizing things, putting things in order. It can also be a time where we're a bit more focused on the smaller details as well. It can be a time where we're a little bit nervous, a little bit high strung, a bit more anal about getting things together and preparing for tasks that we need to get done as well. But I think when the moon is in Virgo, we can have more of a objective view of things rather than having more of an emotional view. I think that those emotions are funneled into like having to move and be productive in a very earth-like way, and so hence the organizing and the anal organizing that can happen. Of course, we are in Sagittarius season, and so energetically, the sun and moon are in a square. And Sagittarius likes to be everywhere at once. It is expansive. And so, therefore, when we have the moon in a Mercury ruled sign and the sun in a Jupiter ruled sign, automatically we have those clashing. Not to mention the fact that this moon in Virgo is going to be ruled by Mercury, who is also in Sagittarius, getting ready to go retrograde. But we will get to that part later. Um, so we do have the moon on Sunday heading into a square with Mercury in Sagittarius. And so this to me looks more so like a very busy time where we are kind of burning the candles at both ends, just doing a lot of possibly traveling, a lot of thinking or a lot of really rescheduling something. There's some sort of conflict where that has to do with like our emotions and what we need to get done, things that would kind of settle us versus like other engagements or other scheduling things that need to get done, and there's some sort of conflict going on there as well. And so I think that Sunday in particular, if you can, um, it's very much a day of like juggling. And so I think if you can take some time to really plan out self-care for yourself and just kind of do whatever. And self-care does not have to be like spas or eating your favorite food, takeout food, or anything like that. In Virgo, I think it's much more um, realistic. So it's like balancing the checkbook kind of thing. Something that will take stress off of you in the future is what this square gives me most as far as self care management. But the moon in a square to Mercury in Sagittarius does give me very much you're running yourself a bit ragged, trying to be everywhere at the same time, possibly for everybody. And so just don't spread yourself, try not to spread yourself too thin. Take it easy on yourself if you can. Schedule in time to just be able to relax and take stress off yourself. It can just be a very high anxiety, very stressful time because, things are just kind of everywhere. Everybody wants to talk, everybody wants to say something. And it can be also a time where you're trying to get things done, and that relative calls and they just have a lot to say and they try to keep you on the phone for an hour. um, but also kind of taking away from that can be annoying, it can be stressful. But I think the good news that we can look forward to on Sunday is that the sun in Sagittarius is in a trine with Mars in Leo. And so it's not that there isn't this sense of responsibility that's happening that can be stressful. But the sun in Sagittarius is so much about beliefs, it's about travel, it is in part about like learning new things as well, and not just learning them but understanding them. It is very spiritual and intuitive as well. When we have Mars and Leo, we're more motivated to go towards those things, or to kind of, I think, master those things, or just, very much open our heart up to those things. And so when we have the sun in Sagittarius and a trine to Mars in Leo, it gives me very much being authentic to yourself. Really being able to tap into that authenticity, and when it comes to your actions. And so while I think that this can be a day that is a little bit stressful and a little bit, it's more about like multitasking. I think you're able to kind of take it in stride, because it's something, the things that you say yes to, I think you'll be very passionate about these days. Or they're, at the very least, there are things that you do believe that need to get done. And I still stand by that whole take time for yourself thing. like, but it's a very, I think the overall kind of feel, though, is very joyful when we have the sun involved. Um, the sun is at a 3 on Sunday, and so it can, have a lot to do with like talking to different people and possibly unintentionally overbooking yourself. But when Mars is in Leo, it speaks a lot to the heart. There can be a lot of like socializing, going to parties. Yeah, like all of that really, I think, comes into play a lot. There is definitely some fun to be had on this day as well. And I think it would be very good to kind of tap into that, at least for a little bit. Just try not to do a lot of overindulging. Sagittarius can be the party animal, and Leo loves to be dramatic. And so just be careful about how much trouble you're getting yourself into. There is such thing as too much fun, but it's a very much work hard, play hard kind of day. We also have Venus in Capricorn making a trine to the moon in Virgo. And so it can be, very much about like, when you're out there helping others, it's an investment of your time and in a relationship, so it's purposeful. It's not just like that you're doing things for everybody willy-nilly. You're doing things because you want to, and at the same time, these are people that you truly do care about. Possibly there is maybe another reason, possibly that has to do with work. It's Capricorn. I'm not saying that is the only reason. Capricorn obviously does have a life outside of work, but it can be like, I need to get this done. I need to scale back on these things. It could be, like we were talking about, budgeting or balancing the checkbook. Venus can be money. But I do really like that there is a focus on like the more tangible things as well. And so it can be like, rewarding yourself with shopping, but you find, you're really clued in on finding a bargain when you do your shopping for yourself. And so Sunday looks like an interesting day for the tarot. We have the Two of Pentacles. I love that. For the week, we got the Two of Swords and the Death card. But for Sunday in particular, we got the Two of Pentacles. The Two of Pentacles is about multitasking. It's about balance, especially when it does come to financial things or the more tangible things. Pentacles are not just about finances. They are about everything that is physical, including the body. And I think that's so appropriate with the moon in Virgo. And so while you're out there ripping and running, just make sure that you are taking care of your own health as well as, managing your schedule so that it's not bringing you unneeded mental stress or physical stress. So that is Sunday. Moving right on, we have Monday, November 25th. And we have the moon going into Libra on that day. When the moon is in Libra, we're focusing in on relationships, as we talked a little bit about at the beginning of this video with the Two of Swords. It's focusing on reciprocity in those relationships and what's fair, what isn't, as well as like the boundaries that we have in relationships. I do want to call attention to this opposition that the moon is going into with Chiron, and it's also creeping up on Lilith in Libra as well. I think for at least until like about Wednesday, we're going to see some of our insecurities kind of peak out when it comes to our relationships or things that we haven't really healed within ourselves when it comes to relationships with other people, or at least with ourselves, like with our self-confidence, self-love. What are our values? Is there some sort of conflict between our values, our relationships, and our own kind of like Chiron is our wounded place, or where we are still kind of unhealed, whether it be physical or not. And so Chiron and Aries physically would be like some sort of like head injury, or like our ego could be another way to look at Chiron and Aries. And so it can be like, yeah, there's some sort of insecurity about self that's clashing up with our relationships and maybe causes some sort of conflict to happen in our relationships through those insecurities kind of being aired out. But the moon in Libra does promise some sort of change when it comes to the reciprocity in relationships or relationships in general, or they're just being more of a focus on relationships. And I think it's more so about the relationships that you truly value, the ones that you invest a lot of your hard earned work and time into. Because this moon is ruled over by Venus in Capricorn, which it is squaring. And so when we look at Venus in Capricorn, we are getting more of a sense of, less is more. I want relationships that will really go the distance. I want relationships that I've worked hard for and that are going to be like a long term thing. Capricorn is about achievement, but it rewards long term thinking and long term work. And so, and that is what kind of makes Capricorn like the goat, the climber, is that it has high expectations. And so I do wonder if like we're kind of bumping up against other people's expectations of us, and that's bringing out some sort of insecurity, and it's causing some sort of emotional outburst or argument or disagreement or possibly indecision or just imbalance about like how that is playing out in our relationships as well, because of course Venus is also square Chiron too. And so all of that really comes into play on Monday, and we're going to really be feeling that all the way through Wednesday. But I did want to talk about that. For the tarot for Monday, we have the Eight of Cups. The Eight of Cups is a card that can be about infinity, constantly going back and forth, like, just kind of being in a cycle. But it's, the eight as a number can also be about manifestation. And I really want to lean into that because cups are about our emotions. So the very things that we might have doubts about in our relationships can very much manifest during this time. And it can send us into this spiral of feeling like things can or cannot work out. And I think it's really important with Libra, since Libra is a air sign and it's so much about like intellect and looking at things from a more objective point of view, and looking at things from both sides and weighing things. The Eight of Cups, can be there to really bring in that manifestation through some sort of healing, because eight is also associated with Scorpio, which is about rebirth, death and rebirth as well. The Eight of Cups textbook definition is going to be, some sort of abandonment, leaving things behind, even though they're stable. And so I wonder if a lot of us are saying like, yeah, I've been in this relationship for so long, but I have some thoughts, or I have some like really hard feelings about leaving behind this toxic relationship because it's not serving me, but I've spent so much time invested into it. Um, and I think that if that is the case, the Eight of Cups is your card for sure, not just the card for Monday, because the Eight of Cups reminds us that even though something is stable, we've outgrown it. We are manifesting, whether we want it to or not, we are manifesting our next journey forward, and we have to be brave enough to take those first steps. All right, heading into Tuesday. Tuesday, we have Mercury finally retrograde. I highlighted Mercury going retrograde. So, excuse my messy drawing there. I just wanted to really make it clear. Mercury is retrograde on Tuesday, November 26th. Um, we will still have the moon in Libra, so there's still a focus on relationships. We do still have that square, like that T square that's happening between the moon, Venus, and Chiron that we just talked about. So we're still feeling that. Other than that, Mercury is retrograde in Sagittarius. It's having us reevaluate our beliefs. There can be scheduling delays or just like delays when it comes to like things like graduation or learning new things. There can be some delays with documents as well as like air travel as well or long distance travel. Other than that, the moon is going to be in a trine with Jupiter in Gemini. And so it can be, very much a time where we're very social, but I think it can also be a time where there's a lot of miscommunication with our relationship since Mercury just went retrograde. And it kind of hits the hardest when it first goes retrograde. It hits hard the whole time, but definitely when it first goes retrograde on Tuesday. And so then we also have the Sun and Mars still in that trine as well, as we talked about in the beginning. We have the King of Cups for our tarot card for Tuesday, bringing in compassion and understanding and being not being quick to anger or quick to act when it comes to our relationships with others. The King of Cups is great at sitting back and observing without judgment. First, he uses his intuitive and creative gifts in a very practical, constructive way. He's not a pushover, but he aims to understand and to use compassion when doling out judgment, which I think is perfect since the moon is in Libra right now. And so we have like some legal things going on. We could possibly have like some legal things going on or some sort of judgments or some sort of like, again, like I was saying, moon in Libra gives me very much judgment card energy. So hard decisions, things coming back up from the past that maybe trigger emotions, King of Cups, but kind of taking more of an objective view of things, weighing things, taking time to reflect on the past and not letting the past overwhelm you, but instead you face the past with no fear and you do the work. You fully let the feels overtake you, you deal with them, and you go forward and you use that healing in a very productive way. And so that's how I feel like we should be looking at Tuesday. Especially with Mercury going retrograde, it's a time to do all the reevaluate, redo, repair, reflect. And so that is Tuesday. Okay, so we're on Wednesday, November 27th. We will have the moon moving into Scorpio. When the moon is in Scorpio, all of our feelings get very intense. We go on high alert. We have our spidey senses out. We are focusing on what do we kind of create with other people, intimacy, trust. Fears also are something that can come up as well, or acting out of fear can come up as well. Holding grudges can definitely be something that comes up. But reflection is a big part of Scorpio. Emotions are intense, but they get, I think, a bit more serious. Especially since the moon is the moon is in a Mars ruled sign, and so it's a bit more aggressive. In Scorpio, it's a bit more tactful, at least I think, but it does create that intensity in emotions, and so it can be a bit emotionally passive aggressive. But there can definitely be some themes of secrecy or just wanting to keep things a bit more private when the moon is in Scorpio as well. The moon is actually square. We have so many squares to the moon's own ruler this week. The moon is, when it does move into Scorpio, it'll be actually square the first day on Wednesday. It'll be square its ruler in Mars in Leo. And so this can cause, one, we already have intense feelings. Squared up against Mars and Leo, it does create a lot of aggression when it comes to relating with other people or relating to leaders. Leaders kind of felt like flying off the handles can definitely happen, or us just kind of really bucking maybe rules that are being imposed upon us as well, or and trying to change those things. But it just gives me a lot of very emotionally dramatic energy, if I'm being quite honest. The moon in Scorpio, like I said, is already intense. Leo can be very dramatic and passionate and speaking from the heart. And when Mars is in Leo, it's acting on those things. And so I think we can have a little bit of a quick, be quick to act and quick to anger when we have Wednesday. Everybody's a little bit high strung and intense, not the same way that we see when the moon is in Virgo, but emotions are definitely running high. Our spidey senses are definitely on alert, especially since the moon energetically is in a trine with Neptune. And so it's a time where our emotions, like it can be a great time of release. As far as, if you want to do all the crying, if you are able to take some time to be a bit more private and reflect with other people that you trust or a therapist or anything like that, I think that this day is great. I know that I say that in almost every video, but there's always opportunities to, release emotionally and at any time, especially since Saturn is currently in Pisces. And so it's about, working through those emotional things. But we have already talked about how, how Venus in Capricorn is in a square with Chiron. That's still going on. Like I said, we won't be feeling that until, about today. And then another thing that we want to pay attention to, adding to that intensity, is that not only will the moon be square its traditional ruler, Mars, that is in Leo, but it will also be square its modern ruler, Pluto, which is in Aquarius as of the 19th of November, finally. And so it can be, a lot of wanting to take control of things, being overly dominant, or people being overly dominant and domineering towards you, and that can cause its own kind of uproar. Aquarius is about rebellion. And when Pluto is there, it can go a bit too far. And so it just gives me very much, people blowing up and just saying, I can't take this anymore. I'm not taking this. I don't want to do this. And, people really drawing some hard lines and making some big changes and taking a stance on what they will and will not accept in a very emotional way. But, sometimes it needs to happen. Whenever I look at Leo and Aquarius, I see the king and the people that the king rules over. Um, and so it's the star and the audience. Think about that kind of relationship. And when you have the moon involved, things are changing, things are in flux during that time. And so something is being stirred up, um, since we have all of that kind of going on in that T square between lots of T squares this week, lots of intensity this week. And not surprising, like we said, we got the death card. It is a time where big changes are happening. Um, but we have the Knight of Wands as our tarot card for Wednesday. Like I said, be very careful about being too quick to act. The nice thing is that Moon in Scorpio is prone to creating. The other side of this, with the tarot being the Knight of Wands, is that be very careful what you do create and how much of it you create. Pluto is prone to Pluto and Scorpio since Pluto rules over Scorpio. And Mars in Leo is also in a fixed sign. All of these signs are fixed signs. They are prone to excess. And so you can be doing a bit too much where you don't really need to. Remember that the sun is still in Sagittarius. So it's about transition. It's about kind of going with the flow, being open to changing your mind about things. Mercury is also very much obviously retrograde. And so it's more about a time of reflection, or where we should be reflecting on things or staying open to, changing our perspectives or beliefs on things. But this T square in particular says anything but that. It says, I'm taking a stand and I'm sticking to it. And that's why I say the Knight of Wands, it can be great to create, and it's great to, have that passion in you. But when it comes to creating, make sure that, you are creating with intention and that you are finishing the things that you create. That is one of the Knight of Wands downfalls, is that it creates so many things that it doesn't really finish, a lot of, what it started. And the Knight of Wands, I think, when it's going into battle, it's very hot and heavy. But at the end of the day, when we have fire energy, fire can become destructive when it's not controlled, or when it's not being used productively. And so, with the Knight of Wands, you just want to be very careful about how quickly you are snapping on people. So, just keep that in mind for Wednesday. All right, for Thursday, we still have the moon in Scorpio, and we're still feeling all of what I said for Thursday. But just to kind of give us a reprieve, the moon will be going into or I guess technically a little bit of a reprieve. The moon will be going into a exact trine with Saturn and Pisces, and so it's a time where we kind of like become a bit more reclusive, where we're taking some time for ourselves, and that can be where we find our happy place at. It can be a time where we're doing a bit more daydreaming, or we are, really taking more time to just kind of rest and recuperate. Scorpio is, scorpions, as depicted by Scorpio. They like to go under rocks, they like to go underneath things and just kind of sleep, hide. They're ambush predators. And so it can be a great time for being tactful, especially since Mars is about to go retrograde in a week. And so I think this is a great time to just kind of do more reflection on things. And so I like the fact that the Four of Wands is the tarot card for Thursday. Fours in numerology are about stability, and wands are going to be fire energy, and so I attribute it to action or instinct. And so it's really causing some sort of stability or structure to our instincts, and it can be a time where we're a bit more rational or a bit more mindful about the actions that we're taking and what do we want out of those things in the long term, and how can we get to our goals, and the achievement of our goals. And so I think it starts to kind of bring things together in a more mental, spiritual space, because we're able to kind of step away from people on this day, or at least for like a couple hours. We're kind of able to have that breath of fresh air to kind of breathe things in. And so that is Thursday. On Friday, we have the moon. It is still in Scorpio, but we will have it making a nice sextile to Venus in Capricorn. So, like I said, Venus in Capricorn really treasures, achievement. It treasures our goals. It treasures career and work and public life. This is a time where you can be very persuasive or very charismatic when it does come to authority figures, or authority figures might take a more of a liking to you, or that you just become very magnetic with other people and in your relationships. And so it's a great day, I think, for networking. Like I spoke on before, the moon is also going to be in a trine, but it's going to be an exact trine on Friday to Neptune in Pisces. And so we can see that, emotions, I think are still a bit intense. However, I think it's a great day for release, as well as, we're psychically a bit more sensitive. And so really, one, pay attention to your dreams. You might get some intuitive hits on, things to come, Make sure you're keeping a dream journal for sure, even especially if it has, anything to do with relationships. But also, we can just, I think timing for actions can be very much useful in using our intuition to kind of figure out when's the best time to make some sort of change. Um, can come up as well. The moon is is opposite Uranus in Taurus that day. So we're talking about change. And so it's like something that really does shake us up. It gets us out of our comfort zone. And it might trigger us in a way that does kind of bring up some fears from the past for sure. When it comes to like our resources or what is ours versus what is somebody else's. There can be some conflicts there. It can be about possibly you having to pay something back or you having to say, hey, you still owe me this. It's time for you to pay up, kind of thing. And so just keep that in mind on Friday. Speaking of collecting on finances or collecting or just kind of recalling your energy back to you, I guess is another way we could look at it. The Knight of Pentacles is our card for Friday. The Knight of Pentacles is the only knight in the tarot deck that is standing still. He is focusing on his one coin, and so he's focused on quality over quantity. He is focused on how can I make this one coin, this one thing, the best it can be. And I love that about the Knight of Pentacles is that he finds that stillness. He is planning. He is not letting the outside world kind of phase him. He is completely at peace and he's really looking and he's very much focused and locked in. And I think being focused and locked in is something that we can just need to really keep in mind on Friday with the Knight of Pentacles being our tarot card, even in the midst of the moon being in Scorpio and our emotions and intuition just being on high alert or just very intense. All right, on Saturday, you guys already know. On Saturday, I do not. Saturday is going to be the new moon in Sagittarius. As we already know, I do not talk about the transits, at least in the tarot weather, for the full and new moons um, on here, but we will talk about what we get for the tarot. I actually did not pull a card ahead of time for the new moon in Sagittarius, and so I'm just going to pull one now. Oh, I love this. And this is so fitting. We have the world card. Sagittarius is about travel or about like, expanding things. Some people say Sagittarius is constantly leaping through its own portals. But it's very expansive. And the world card is that. It can be about travel. I've seen this card be about literal travel, but I've also seen it be about like, the end of one cycle and starting something new. So in its own way, it's about expansiveness as well. Turning the page, creating a new chapter, kind of like a fresh restart. Um, I think it could also, when we're talking about it, Sagittarius, it can be, about learning some sort of new language or, something that comes from far away. Could also be something that we are looking at when we're talking about a new moon in Sagittarius, as far as the energy goes for the tarot as well. But with that being said, guys, that is all I have. Stay tuned for that new moon in Sagittarius video that'll be coming out this week. But other than that, if you enjoyed this video, like I said at the beginning, feel free to give me a like, share, subscribe. I would love to hear from you on how this week goes for you. How have you been so far? Hopefully, everybody is staying warm, staying healthy. I know it's been a struggle for me. I'm hoping that Sagittarius is my 12th house. And so I'm kind of low on energy right now. All I want to do is kind of like lay around in bed. But let me know how your Sagittarius season is going so far. Did you make it out of Scorpio season alive? I'm assuming that you did if you're watching this video, but I'd love to hear from you. But other than that, guys, I will talk to you later. Bye.